Currently recording.
Are you going to run the video though? Are you going to run that for me? Okay. So how do I do that? Do I just say next line?
Just to me. Yeah.
Like that? Sure. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Darren Fry, and I'm going to be doing the marketing portion of this. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I grew up on a farm just northwest of Peoria, and it was a diversified farming operation with grain, poultry. We had an aviation business, and then we also had an apple orchard. We were vertically integrated in 3 of those businesses, but my real passion was agricultural production. So I loved farming, and I loved watching crops grow and harvesting those crops and working with my hands, working with the soil. And so in 1987, after realizing we weren't going to grow the farming operation, I left the farming operation and pursue a career in agronomic consulting. And so that's what led me into the business that I'm in today. After about 7 years working with people on the grounding side, I realized they need help also on the business management side. And so today in Water Street Solutions, we work with them primarily in 3 areas, and we're going to talk about the marketing portion here. But after today, you'll hear about not only that, but finance and crop insurance as well. So just a little bit about myself. I grew up in Peoria, and 29 years now in agricultural systems, helping farmers to understand how to get more production and more profit to the bottom line. I am licensed as a crop insurance agent and a broker, and I reside in Washington, Illinois with my wife. I have 2 children. They're both grown and out of the house now. Today we're going to cover the seasonal trend. We're going to talk about what's important in spring, summer, and then fall and post-harvest. We're also going to be looking at how to remain profitable with all this volatility and uncertainty, and we'll be looking at a very simple model of how to do that. In addition, we'll talk about how important education is. Our learning is so important so that we can take the next step, and then how do we integrate the 3 pieces. You've heard about 2 of them today, and I'm bringing the 3rd one here, but how do we integrate those 3 pieces, and then how to select an advisor. It's so important that when we work with someone, we like them and trust them, and we're going to go through what those things look like. In the seasonal trend, this is the way it's been ever since we started planting corn or soybeans in the spring. We have to rally up sometimes to buy acres, and we'll see that that takes place 6 out of 10 years. That's a typical average, but then 4 out of 10 years you don't need a rally. And what would be the difference between those 2? Would simply be the supply that you're left with the previous fall. So if you have a large supply coming out of the previous harvest over here, you might not have to rally as much, therefore not buying the acres. But a lot of years now that we see the demand and the demand shift as we have in the last 5 years with ethanol and the BRIC nations, we see how we have to rally to secure those acres in the spring, and then of course grow them, get them planted and grow them and get through this summer time that we can see stress on the crop due to pollination or grain fill. And so typically we have an opportunity to sell in the spring, and then we have another opportunity to sell right here in the middle of summer. If we miss those opportunities, we typically miss out because the fall usually is where the lows are. And that's because we have the most supply there. So when we're getting the most supply, we have the cheapest prices. When we have the greatest uncertainty, we get opportunities to sell higher prices. We also see that once in a while we forget to raise it, and that's over here in the post-harvest side. And when we don't raise the crop and we have a supply shortage, we have to go up to ration demand. And so as we ration demand, obviously we take the price higher, and that allows us to come into the next year again, starting with probably a bigger acreage buying spree. So unless we change when we plant, when we harvest, this is the typical seasonal, we rally for acres if we need them. We have weather concerns, we rally again, and if there's nothing that harms the crop, we fall into our fall lows here. If we don't raise it, we have a post-harvest rally. So we're going to talk a little bit as we go through this, some of those changes that have taken place with the advent of ethanol. But first we want to look at why do we change? The hardest thing we do as people is we change. We get pretty habitual in our habits, in our patterns every day, and we say, why would we change? We like life the way it is, and we find that one way we change is when we learn a better way. And so being exposed to new ideas, coming to a forum like this Ag Summit, just rubbing elbows with different people, you're going to pick up some ideas and take home and use in your farming operation. You've always got to be learning, you always got to be adapting. It's about outrunning not your neighbor necessarily, that one will be something you laugh about. It's like outrunning the bear. You don't have to outrun the bear, you just got to outrun your neighbor who's being chased by the same bear. And so you want to learn faster, you want to adapt quicker, you want to have a sustainable competitive advantage. And as a result, learning is one way. The second one is more of an emotional response, and that is we dig in, we're stubborn, we are unwilling to change, unwilling to look at new things. And then one day we realize that we had a serious loss, whatever that loss might be, financial, emotional, some relational loss. And then we say, boy, I don't want to go through that again, I'm going to change. And so the pain of staying the same has got to become greater than the pain of change. And so you're here today to learn. I credit you with taking the initiative to be here because proactive learning is less painful and is always more useful if we can always stay in front of the curve. And so adapting quick is important. As we look at this next slide, we're going to take a look at a chart here. This is December corn. This is where we were coming into harvest right after the September report or right prior to it. And then, of course, this was right ahead of the October crop report. We saw a big decline in the market, and now we bounced up here about to the middle of the range, a little less than middle. But the bottom line is pain's going to be caused if we sell it and it goes higher, or we don't sell it and it goes lower. And we have to have a plan in place. We have to be learning what some of these tools can do and how we can affect our outcome in a more positive way. So that's December corn. Here's our business model. And this is pretty simple. This is built for farmers here, but any business could plug in, whether it's manufacturing or a service business. And really in that upper left quadrant, we see producing more, whether it's bushels in this case or more weight if you're putting on, weight on cattle or hogs, a better quality product, a better service, and you're producing it for less cost. And of course, then you have to sell it for a higher price. So we're talking about production and efficiencies on the left, and we're talking about how to market it on the right. If we do these things, the distance between those two, as we spread those apart, is our profit margin. The profit margin is so important because that is what drives our business forward. If we produce less and we have higher costs, we're less efficient here and we sell it for under our break even. Obviously, this leads to no margins or even a negative margin. And so we want to stay in the black. And that's really what we want to help growers understand is they can implement strategies and use the different tools that allow them to stay in the black year after year. And that's what it's really all about, isn't it? Staying in the black. Each year we take a tour, an aerial flight over the crop. This past year we did it 3 different times. We left here in Peoria, where our home office is, and we basically flew up to the border of Illinois, Wisconsin, and flew out in Iowa up through Minnesota, down through Nebraska and back, and then we took one to the eastern Corn Belt as well, covering mainly the 5 corn growing states and where soybeans are produced. You can see that there was a lot of variability this year. There was flooding clear out on Missouri. There was too wet to get planted in Ohio. We got crops in pretty timely in the middle part of that, but then we ran into the hottest and one of the driest Julys on record. And so there's a lot of variability, and that's shown up in our final USDA production numbers. Right now, we're sitting with about 146.5 bushel crop. We still have the January crop report to go. But it was no surprise the crop was down even from last year's reduced crop. And that's just simply because of how much weather variability there was out here. We go back to the seasonal here, and we rallied up because of a short crop intent to buy the acres. We had some trouble planting it. We rallied back into summer because of the July heat. We've broken pretty hard here in the fall, but still at levels that are much greater than what we've ever seen in the middle of harvest. But now that we go higher into planting next year, do we have a post-harvest rally from that fall break? Or do we kind of trade sideways and then trend lower as we get into next spring? We'll talk more about that in the wrap-up later on today. Farming's gotten a lot more complex. When I left the farm back in '87, it was pretty simple. If you worked a little harder than your neighbor, you got to head. Today you got to work harder and smarter, and you got to stay ahead of the curve. And some of these management decisions are those things like agronomic planning, things like insurance, crop insurance, but also how do you protect your liability of the operation. When do I sell grain? How much do I sell? Is there a need to store it? Is it a basis appreciation or a carry that I'm looking for? Or should I go ahead and move the crop now? If I do move the crop, do I want to re-own the crop? Re-ownership's a big deal. You know, in 2010, if we sold ahead and didn't re-own it, we left a lot of money on the table. And then farm expansion, that's always a popular question. Should I be expanding? Should I be buying ground? Should I be bidding up cash rent? How does one go about doing that so they can bring the next generation in? Feasibility studies. When we take a look at expanding, are we going to get a return to ourselves? This internal rate of return, this net present value. How does that look? So we can run feasibility studies as we work with our growers. And then if we've done things right, we have a financial situation that we must protect through estate planning. We must turn and hand the baton over to the next generation through succession and transition. So this is a big deal. How do we accomplish all these things? There's certainly a lot more questions sometimes than there are answers. And this is the management decision funnel. Everything that goes in the top ends up being processed and it comes out the bottom in dollars and cents. Everything hits our balance sheet with either black ink or red ink. So how are decisions affecting our return on assets, our return on equity? Well, some of the reasons you need education is there's a lot to learn. Farming hasn't gotten less complex, it's gotten more complex. And when you think about that, everything from biotechnology to all the insurance products to the different tools that are allowed to manage risk at the Board of Trade. And so education is key to everything. Can we expand our knowledge base? Can we learn in such a way that when we apply these things, it makes a bigger profit for our bottom line? Education always leads to understanding. If we're open-minded and we're learning and we're seeking to understand, that understanding is going to grow, that knowledge base is going to grow, and that's going to lead us to a different outcome, which is our success. And I think that's the greatest thing about where we are right now in farming is we've gotten the people that maybe had trouble with production out in the 80s. We've gone through a lot of the risk management things in the 90s and the early 2000s. But the bottom line now is who can adapt quicker. You know, we have a world where the information is doubling every year and a half to 2 years now. How does one keep up? Well, we're going to talk a little bit about how we get to a trusted advisor in a little bit. But there is a lot to learn. And so education is key to this. If you don't know how all these things work, there's no way you can connect them and assimilate what you need to be doing to get the right outcome. Some of the things we educate on is how to understand what our break-evens are, how to take those break-evens and tie crop insurance into that so we protect our risk-bearing ability. Cash contracts, is it something that we should do in HTA where we lock in the futures and not the basis? Is it a basis contract because the basis is very favorable? We're just coming out of a period where we've seen very strong basis due to not having as much crop, especially in the East. Is this advantageous for us to go ahead and use a basis contract or sell the grain and buy it back on the board? Do we want to forward pricing? All different cash contracts. How about re-ownership options? So how do we do that? Education is the key to that because people fear trading their account. But after they understand more, the fear subsides and they're able to implement and execute those re-ownership strategies. How do you use your bins? Bins are used not only logistically in the fall, but you also use them for the carry, capturing that, and capturing the basis. A lot of times we have built bins so we store grain, forget about it, hopefully the price goes up. But that's an asset and we should be using that correctly. And of course then if you're a livestock producer, hedging feed needs is so important. The difference between a livestock person with a huge margin this year and one with a small margin is really where they bought their feed inputs. And then market technicals. You know, fundamentals always drive the market, the technicals time it, and merging those two together isn't the easiest thing to do, but the more we understand, the more we learn about it, the easier it becomes to be able to implement. When you look at education, you can get that a lot of different ways, but some of the ways that we help the producer get it is at their farm, around the kitchen table, talking to the partners. That might be your spouse, that might be a brother, that might be both spouses with your brother, might be a father. It's another good one. It might be in our office. We have client forums. We have these events where people come and they have a couple days to learn, go to different workshops. Or it could be over the phone. One of the things the market advisors do is they talk to you quite often, typically once a week. Sometimes when things aren't moving so fast, like from the October to November timeframe we just went through, maybe it's not as necessary. There's not as many decisions being made. When the markets are volatile, it could be 2 or 3 times a week. Through webinars, we have the ability to go online and do a webinar. Even though you're in another state and we're in Peoria, we can connect and look at the same information online. Of course, weekly market updates and videos. So learning can take place a lot of different ways and different times and through different media. If you look at how these tie together, financials always are the cornerstone of this. If you want to know where you're at, what you need from the market, how much crop insurance you're going to need, what coverage level, what type of crop insurance. We start with analysis, and that allows us to understand really 5 things about your operation. The first thing that we're going to look at is this long-term debt, followed by short-term debt, followed by family living. We're going to understand those 3 things a lot better. We're going to look at machinery replacement costs as the 4th, and then profit, which is an expense of staying in business. Financial analysis are such a key to what we do because they allow us to understand those things that affect other parts of our operation, such as risk variability and how we tie crop insurance into it, and where our break-even is and where we should start marketing. How are we doing? See, if we're doing well, making good decisions around production, around marketing, around how we insure, we're going to see more profit to the bottom line. We're going to see a greater return on assets, a greater return to our equity. And so after a while, you build a trend. You can see that your working capital and your net worth is growing. You can see the decisions that you're making are really gaining some traction here to your profitability. Crop insurance is going to be key to this because we know production is the #1 thing driving your bottom line, driving your operation forward. Crop insurance is number 2. And the reason for that is it not only protects yield, it protects price at the Board of Trade. So we're going to come into this next year with a fairly high base price, probably $6 or better. And with that, we're going to be recommending high coverage levels. You've already heard that from the crop insurance person, and this is why. It is the cheapest put option for both yield and price. And so crop insurance is going to protect your risk variability. It's going to keep you from digging a hole with those first 3 I mentioned. Long-term debt, short-term debt, and family living. Those are the 3 keys to not dig a hole in your operation. Crop insurance then ties back to marketing. If you remember the seasonal, typically you get your highest price either in the spring or in the summer when uncertainty is the greatest. And because of that, now we know that we can start marketing not only above our break-even, which our financial analysis tells us, but we can know how many guaranteed bushels that we can sell. If we take that high coverage level and we have a 200 bushel APH or 150, and we insure 85% of it, we have a lot of bushels that we can sell, whatever 85% of that number is. So with the 200, that'd be 170. And if we're going to get the biggest bang for our buck in spring and summer, and let's see what fall brings, guaranteed bushels allow us to forward market it. Those bushels that we forward market against our crop insurance tie back to financial analysis by helping us reach our financial objectives. You see, these are each independent pieces and components that you have to make decisions on each and every year. But they're also interdependent. Interdependent meaning that while they're separate, they also are connected. And what you do and how you make decisions in one area will definitely affect the others. Let me give you one example of that. If you were in 2010 and you sold a head because you thought you had a good crop, and you sold a head at $4, and then all of a sudden you didn't raise the crop, we know the price went to $758. Let's just say it went to $7 for easy math. If we sold 50% of our bushels because we thought we had a good crop coming, the price goes up $3, and we're a 200 bushel producer for easy math. We just lost 100 bushels times $3 of opportunity. It's $300 an acre. Worse yet, we didn't grow 200 bushel. We only grew 150. We were on flat black ground, and that was the worst in 2010 because of all the torrential rain we had. So as a result, we only get 150 bushel. We had some corn problems too. Now all of a sudden, 100 bushel, which was half, now becomes 2/3. 2/3 at $4, the price is $7, inputs are rising. The biggest problem is we had a 65% coverage level here, and it's not going to give us any payment. So we didn't have the production we needed that caused the marketing to accelerate the percentages we had marketed. We didn't have the right crop insurance, and ultimately it affects your financial health of your business. And so remember that production is first, and insurance second, marketing third, financials fourth. Bottom line is we never want to see financials be elevated number one. When a banker says, I'm concerned about your future, that means something has gone awry with production, crop insurance, or marketing. And so these do tie together, we must manage them together, and that's probably one of the biggest points of differences of Water Street Solutions, is we look at these things and we integrate. Now let's talk about, you can see that's when I was a little bit younger and I had hair. But what are you looking for in a market advisor? And here are the things you really want. You always want to like the person. So likability is going to be that number one thing. And likability always correlates and connects directly to this honesty piece. See, this trust. If I don't like somebody, I probably don't think they're that honest. I probably don't think they're that trustworthy. I'm probably not going to open up and be able to relate to them. And so that person has to be somebody you trust and has full integrity. The second part is going to be their knowledge. And so this knowledge is their competency. Do they know anything about basis or carry or cash contracts? Do they know anything about direction of the market? Do they know anything about futures or options? Or how that connects back to crop insurance? Or how that meets your financial objectives? Do they know what they're doing? And then the third part is going to come back to service. Now, service is what you cannot define when you're buying someone. It's only shortly after that purchase that you realize how good service is. But I'll tell you something, during the sales process, when somebody's beginning and deciding to work with an advisor, what value are they adding? How dependable are they? Do they call back? Do they do what they say they're going to do? Is their due-to-say ratio 100%? Because you want somebody that cares more about you than they care about themselves. You want this trust. You want somebody that's knowledgeable, not somebody that's learning and doesn't have anybody backing them. We have a lot of young market advisors in this company, but we have a network of individuals within the company that help shore that up. You know, nobody knows everything on the first day on the job. And I still don't know everything, and I've been doing this a long time. So we're always learning. That eager learning is so much a part of succeeding in life and continue to be innovative. But this service piece is so important, and that's defined after you're on board. So what's in it for you? What would you gain by signing up with Water Street Solutions and working with some of these specialists? Well, the first thing is peace of mind. You know, making decisions all by yourself or in a vacuum, it isn't fun. It isn't easy. There's always regret. We always tend to judge a previous decision when we get new information. And so we try to help the growers understand you can't do that. You make those decisions for a reason. But peace of mind is something that comes to our producers as they work with a group of trusted advisors. The next thing is just learning. You know, a lot of times we fear things and we won't implement those things we fear. It's because we don't understand them. So as we learn, we expand our tools and ability to manage our risk. This education piece is very, very important. Making decisions quicker. When we're not sure because we've never done the homework to learn, we're going to procrastinate. When we absolutely know we need to spray for this bug or buy these calls or take a high level of insurance, we do it because we already understand it. Therefore, we can act quickly on it and make these decisions happen. We develop better disciplines. You know, some people are disciplined in one area of their life, but maybe in another area they're not. You might be a producer here today, and they're very disciplined in the production side. You love it, you think about it, you dream about it, you're passionate about it. Fact of the matter is, there's some things like looking at spreadsheets, your financials, inventories, marketing. You just want to throw that off. You don't want to do it. But we'll help you develop better discipline so you understand how those things are going to impact your business if those decisions are not made. And we'll help you through that process. Of course, we have increased profitability. That's the name of the game, driving more profit to your bottom line and developing a better black ink situation on the balance sheet. And of course, leadership. People that you work with must take a position. You wouldn't go to a surgeon, you wouldn't go to a doctor and have them lay out 5 or 6 different possible treatments and then ask you which one you'd like to pursue. You'd ask them, hey, you're the expert, what do you think I should? Give me probabilities, tell me what I should do. And really that comes down to the leadership that this advisor offers you. Leadership is very important. So here's what we covered in the last 20 minutes or so. We covered the seasonal trend, talking about how we get uncertainty in spring and in the summer, and that is where the highest prices usually come. We talked about that simple profitability model where if we increase our production on one side and increase our selling price and we separate those two, that profit margin grows. We talked about the independent but interdependent nature of those things like financial analysis, crop insurance, and marketing. How important those are to integrate and tie together to get more bang for your buck. There's a synergistic impact those three have when weaved together. What you should look for in an advisor, it's so important you like them. Likability leads to this relationship that builds a trust, the transparency, that honesty piece that was number one, and of course the knowledge piece. You know, you don't want to deal with people that aren't as smart as you are. You want to deal with people smarter than you. Why would you pay somebody for something you already know? You got to have people bringing new things to the table. And of course then the service element. Are they there when you need them? Are they taking care of you? What's in it for you? Well, we talked about that peace of mind. We talked about just understanding how these different things worked and the education needed for that learning. We talked about how profitability going to your bottom line, it's got to be about that. There's got to be a net improvement in your operation. And so as you look at those things and what that means to you, that's why we bring a team of specialists together. That's how marketing ties to these other two things. So we'll be having a panel later, and we're going to hold questions for right now. But in half an hour or so after the wrap up, I'll be back up here answering any of your marketing questions. So thank you much. Appreciate the attentiveness.